Good evening, Internet, and welcome to Counter at Your Own Risk, episode 50, where Kent and Kevin and Chris are going to discuss the TV show Hannibal, and potentially further on in podcasts go into the movies discussing Hannibal Lecter as a character. This is a near and dear one to me. I forced them to go through hours and hours and hours of serial killer cannibal footage in order to do this podcast. So A, I want to apologize to them, and B, find out how they're doing. I'm doing pretty good. It's been a relatively good August and September for me. So I hope things have been going good for you as well.
Chris, you're actively trying to kill me. And I'm not even talking about the sleep thing so much as the fucking food thing. This show may have added 5 pounds to me over the past 2 weeks because, I don't know, I mean, especially the first two and a half seasons, you can't watch an episode without getting hungry. I don't give a fuck if we're eating somebody or not. You're getting hungry. I can't be alone. Like, you guys got hungry while watching this stuff, right?
When I'm at work, I bring a dinner with me, and that's all I have for the 12 hours I'm there. And I would be sitting there watching these episodes to recap up and go over it. And I'm like, I am so fucking hungry right now that if Hannibal put that down in front of me, I would be fucking eating it. So,
yeah.
Yeah. I started making bacon and eggs like for my girlfriend every morning. I used to watch a couple episodes and be like, I'm gonna get the thick bacon, and like I would start the episode and stop it and then go down and like cook some food. So,
all right. So before we get into this, Kevin is going to take season 1. I think I'm taking season 2, and Kent's going to be discussing season 3. I just want to go over a little bit of my history with the character. Because,
can we wish Kevin a happy birthday?
Oh, shit. Kevin.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. It's been a great birthday.
All 3 of your profiles told me it was your birthday today.
Yes. I've had life crash down on me a couple times.
I got you. So, Silence of the Lambs came out in 1991. And, I was 12. 13, somewhere in that area at the time. And I remember my mom telling me this story. She's like, your grandmother went to see the fucking Silence of the Lambs. I'm like, what's that? She's like, it's a fucking horror movie about a cannibal serial killer. And your grandmother went to see it without realizing what it was. She just heard that it was up for an Academy Award, so she and her neighbor decided to go see the movie. And then they stayed through, even though it scared the shit out of them because of how good the movie was. But she's like, your grandmother is traumatized by this. So, it was a couple of years before I saw it, but then when I did, I was like, wow, who's this fucking Anthony Hopkins guy? Not realizing that, he'd already had like a 20-year fucking career, maybe even 30 by the time I'm fucking seeing him, in the mid-90s as this. But yeah, that was a great movie. I was one of those people who found out about Manhunter way after it came out. But I was able to watch Hannibal and Red Dragon and Hannibal as they were being released. I forgot what order they actually came out in. And I remember when this show aired, my wife was watching it, and I was getting ready to go to work or do something one night. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? They're doing a TV show based upon Hannibal. I'm like, that's fucking stupid. I was like, how can you, hope to compete with Anthony Hopkins? And she was like, yeah, whatever. It's like, it's really good. It's like, well, okay. And then, I think it was somewhere around season 2, I saw the episode where, Beverly gets dissected, basically.
Yeah.
Just that portion of it. I was like, holy shit, that's fucking really creative and disgusting. And I went back and watched it, and so by the end of season 2, I was going week to week, and I was waiting for season 3 to come out, which was a little bit of a weird experience when it hit. But, watching it now, binging it, certain things that bothered me while waiting for the week to week basis weren't anywhere near as bad, and certain things become way more apparent when you're seeing, you know, you don't have that 6-7 day period in between watching each episode. But I really love this show. I don't think wish it had gotten more attention. I mean, even now, people talk about season 4, and all the leads and the creators say they would love to do it, but I don't think it's happening. So this is what we got. So unless there's anything else, Kevin, you want to take us away with your
oh yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say, when Silence of the Lambs came out, that's 1991, something like that. 91.
Yep.
And
yeah, 91.
I knew about that movie at 10 years old, like, because everyone was talking about it, and I probably saw bits and pieces of it. And I mean, it's the first thing that I ever knew what cannibalism was before even like watching the movie, because it was just, you know, it won Best Picture. And like you were saying, it was crazy. Like that, the cover of that movie is like instilled into my brain before I really even watched it. Also, probably a couple years later. And Manhunter I heard about and didn't really think anything of until later on when I found out when I was looking up Michael Mann and his filmography, and then I was like, I'm gonna check this out. And man, what a ride that movie is. So,
wasn't this basically like wasn't Silence of the Lambs basically, I mean, aside from maybe like The Shining, we didn't have like award-winning horror, well, I'm still not calling this horror, but like that particular genre at the very least, like we didn't have them in the Oscars, really. Like
The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, but I mean, that was Alien.
Before.
Yeah, so, and Alien wasn't up for Best Picture, I think it was just special effects, but I mean,
like it was this in Misery, right?
Yeah. That's how long it's been between, you know.
Carrie was nominated for some things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was nominated for Best Picture, but it could have been. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, so typically if we do see a horror thing in there, it's going to be special effects, maybe score.
Production design.
Right.
Yeah, stuff like that. But very rarely have we seen, you know, like you said, Best Picture nominations.
So, I mean, that was kind of important, kind of cool for its time. I think that was, I don't know, probably the reason why, I don't know, a lot of people our age, well, I mean, Chris was like driving a car by this point, but you know, for younger people like Kevin and I, you know, this was a big deal. So,
yeah, I mean, another reason that I wanted to hit this one up at the time that we're doing is because I think it'll possibly factor into the next 2 podcasts we're doing. So I wanted to get this kind of out of the way before we hit those up. But anyways, sorry to interrupt. Kevin, back to you.
All right, so season 1, Hannibal. Will Graham is recruited to investigate the disappearance of college girls by Jack Crawford, played by Lawrence Fishburne, who also is seeking the assistance of a brilliant psychiatrist, Hannibal Lecter. After a copycat strikes, Will and Hannibal join forces. Will Graham is a forensic, FBI forensic guy. I'm blanking on the technical terms, but he can like.
I don't know if they ever give an exact definition, but yeah, he's like a forensics profiler.
Yes, and he can like recreate the crimes on site or with seeing the crime scene, we'll say. Hannibal Lecter is a successful serial killer / cannibal who manipulates the investigators and other psychiatrists and the daughter victim of the college girl killer to throw them off his scent while feeding them the people that they're looking for. There are all these red flags of conflicts of interest between Hannibal and, well, every single person he interacts with professionally. Everyone sees it but looks the other way because of their affliction with, I would say, law enforcement and, you know, the work that he does for, like, the greater good. And that's kind of the theme that I see throughout the entire series, but especially in season 1. And that's kind of what I have to get into it. And before, I don't know, should I go through my best of, or do you guys want to like open it up?
Or hit what you want to talk about, and we can bring the
Okay.
discussion from there.
So I would say the worst episode would be episode 7, Sorbet, directed by James Foley. It's not a bad episode. It's just not as exciting and as the other ones, and it's just kind of like plateaus in the middle. Do you guys remember that one offhand?
Yeah, that was the very first time I watched it. I remember that was the only one I couldn't really remember who the killer of the week was for season 1, because it's really A, not a serial killer, and B, kind of like unimportant in the majority of the actual story for the episode.
Yeah.
Wait, so are we saying episode 7?
Oh, I'm saying that's my pick for the worst. It's not that it was a bad, and the worst episodes were kind of hard. Usually they weren't bad. They're just kind of boring and would lose my interest. So it may not even have anything to do with the show itself. It might just be the time of day that it was, you know.
Okay. I think I had that as my second worst. I thought episode 4 was far worse, though. The one with the kids and Molly Shannon, which it was kind of cool seeing Molly Shannon do her thing, but that episode went no fucking where.
You know what's funny as shit about that one? Is it was deemed so controversial that it never aired on TV. They were like, oh, we can't show kids killing people, and then a kid getting shot at the end by FBI. So
it's a touchy subject, yeah. Oh, wait, I get that.
So it never actually aired on television, but on like Hulu or the programs that were streaming it.
Yeah, and also Hannibal. Wait, what is this? Episode 4 OF? Yeah. Wait.
Yeah. Wait.
Oh yeah, directed. Oh, did you look those up?
Oh, Kevin, I know you said you took notes, motherfucker. I took
Directed
notes.
by Peter Maddock, director of Changeling and Species 2.
Figuring into our conversation this week.
Wow.
But that's in my notes. It says this is the one where Hannibal gives mushroom tea to a traumatized teen, like who just like what a red flag that is. That's like the worst thing I could think of to give a kid. Like, old Abigail. That actually kind of creeped me out. So yeah, that definitely wasn't the worst episode, but that was probably one of the worst things I've seen, where it was kind of like a cringe scene where he's like, I'm going to give you the mushroom tea. So yeah, what is 7? It's just, what was the big thing that?
7 was the one with, the ambulance killer who was killing people to sell their kidneys and stuff. But the main portion of that episode was, Hannibal / the Chesapeake Ripper fucking with Jack after he, gave him back Miriam Lass's arm inside that, like a observatory or whatever. And then, like, calling him from his box outside his house in order to, not be able to be traced, playing the, her message on the phone for him.
Can we give props to the observatory? Because what a random ass place that they kept revisiting time and time again. Like, they must have had a great deal to film there.
Oh yeah.
But you know what? Episode 7, to me, I don't know if there's a real name for it, but I always call it like a bridge episode. Like, you got all these things that you just kind of got to keep the fans going. You're not going to get anything major, but you got to bridge the gap between, where the story has been, and you got to just move it forward. And it's an episode you can realistically miss and not really miss much of anything. But I don't know. I always call them like a bridge episode.
Yeah, no, that's a very good quantification and observation for it. Yeah, it needs to progress the story, but nothing major happens within it.
Hannibal's romantic. I have very few notes. It's like, but I do have a question in my notes. But Hannibal has a romantic interest. That's not a question. That's that was just something new that I didn't really see in any of the films. And I was curious, was Hannibal referred to as a Chesapeake Ripper in the other movies?
You know what? Having just rewatched all of them except for Hannibal Rising, he's never referred to as the Chesapeake Ripper, but at least in Red Dragon, and not in Manhunter, and potentially in Silence of the Lambs, there are newspaper clippings where they're talking about him, where they label him as Chesapeake Ripper, especially in Red Dragon, where Ralph Fiennes is going over the his scrapbook that he creates to the Red Dragon and all of his.
So
shit
probably the
Hannibal
books then, because that was the other one.
Yeah, but again, like most of what season 1 and season 2 we get are all prequels to anything that appears in any of the books. Season 3 throws that out of the way and goes, starts at the furthest book in Hannibal and then drops back to the first written book, Red Dragon, so we get a little bit of a juxtaposition there, especially in orders of operations for what happens. But yeah, so I found it, fascinating, to see how they built up, the prelude to.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I thought that was really cool too, that it was like the whole, like, relationship between, I would say, I'm going to use Red Dragon as an example of like Ed Norton and Anthony Hopkins. Like, I mean, we get like at least a good season of it, And in other ways, yes.
Oh yeah.
But so, do you have a worst episode, Chris?
Probably from season 1, episode 7. I mean, I get where Kent was coming from when he was talking about it with us, where like a lot of what happens at the very end of season 1 doesn't make sense from a logical standpoint, but one of the things that this show does really well is that it throws logic out of the window very often, and it's a very visual show in regards to the way scene compositions are, the dream sequences, nightmares. Later on in the season, we find out Will is suffering from encephalitis, so his brain is actually swollen, and he's like running probably like one of Kent's like 105-degree fevers, and he's being manipulated through all kinds of psychological manipulation by Hannibal at the same time, so he can't even trust what's real or what's not anymore. And a lot of the things that they show are really creative. I think for me, 7 was probably the weakest. Episode 1 is the introductory episode, so even though I thought it was pretty well done, it still has to establish, what the format's going to be, who the characters are. I really love the thing that they go into with Will when he's examining the crime scenes with the like back and forth kind of mental windshield wiper, I guess, that erases the stuff.
Reenactments?
Yeah, exactly. This is my design kind of thing.
Which I've been saying all week. Like, make food. Oh, this is my design. Oh, it's peanut butter jelly sandwich. Good.
I knew I was going to like the show, though, when I got to episode 2. And there's a scene where, like, a cop is talking to Freddie Lounds after she's fucked over his career, and she's trying to sell him, I can get you into private security. And the serial killer of the week just walks up to him out of nowhere and just fucking shoots the guy in the head. Like, it was surprising as fuck to me. I was like, okay, I'm in. Like, if you can surprise me that much 2 episodes in, I'm along for the ride.
Yeah, that was great.
So, all right, you brought this up, Chris, and now that I'm thinking about it, you're right. The fucking season finale was the worst episode, and I want one of you two fuckers to fucking defend this shit. Defend that season finale, because it made no sense whatsoever. And even in hindsight, now knowing what we know, like, I had a gripe about the Abigail quote-unquote death thing, but, this is cliche TV at this point, where if you don't see it on screen, it doesn't happen. Okay, I get that. But can we acknowledge the fact that it just didn't make sense? Like, it was just plot armor for... it was badly written. Like, why was nobody watching the Hobbs house? They know that's where he's going.
Not only that, but, like, this is why I say, if you're looking at it logically, it doesn't make sense. Like, there's no way that knowing Will has kidnapped Hannibal, being suspected of being the copycat murderer in all of these killings, that Jack is going to go to the Hobbs house by himself without any backup.
Yeah.
I've never been in a situation in any kind of business where when there's like physical work to be done, you send the guy at the very very top in charge of it to be the one doing like the physical labor. That doesn't happen.
Right.
You're not going to send the chief of police to go arrest, a jaywalker. You're going to send
unless it's Police Chief Wiggum. Yeah. Then
maybe. Yeah.
I know I shouldn't be like jumping to like this whole logical gap, but
it's fine.
I feel it's okay to because it's well written. Everything else was pretty well written to just have, it goes from like a grade A writing, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, I'm poking holes into this.
And I mean, really, the only reason it works at all is because we've had at this point 12 episodes of seeing Hannibal manipulate Will and manipulate everyone around him into believing that Will is capable of doing this shit. So when he throws up the fucking ear in the kitchen sink, Will's unsure even of himself. And it isn't until this one that anybody else outside of Hannibal and the dead doctor discover that Will is actually sick at this, not just with the potential mental illness, but, sick for what's going on. And that's probably why it's taken Will so long to realize that Hannibal himself is the actual copycat killer. So,
how the hell did Will escape anything when he was as quote unquote sick as he was?
When he's all blacked out?
Well, in which portion?
When he escaped the transport, he's supposedly running the 105 fever. If you've ever had 105 fever, you know.
Oh yeah.
You can't.
Well, to go along with that, I've never had to escape from the cops ever, so I don't know if that would give me motivation, especially knowing that this guy who I trusted has actually been murdering people and feeding them to me over the course of the last 3 or 4 months. So
I speculate mentally, yeah. I don't know physically you can actually...
Adrenaline meets 105 temperature. We need to figure this out.
I just don't think it's possible.
Yeah, I don't know.
No.
Yeah, we need...
Where's Mythbusters?
Can we get Mythbusters? Absolutely.
I would. I'd also just like to draw two things to attention. A, I fucking love the casting of the main characters. Like, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but like for me, and this is unfair because Anthony Hopkins basically had 16 minutes in Silence of the Lambs, the majority of Hannibal, and only a couple scenes in Red Dragon to solidify his hold on that role, and he made it iconic. But I mean, after somewhere around 32, 34 hours worth of TV, like, I fucking love Mads as fucking Hannibal. I love Hugh as Will Graham and Lawrence Fishburne as Jack Crawford. Not only did the three work well in the role, they worked well together, and the writers, I think for the most part, did a really good job of making them all intelligent, believable characters when it seems to be, in this day and age, very hard to write an intelligent character in any kind of media.
Yeah, I would agree with that. One of the most interesting casting things was what's his name? Fucking Scott Thompson from fucking Kids in the Hall is one of the lab coats. I just call them the lab coats, and their whole purpose, this whole series is, oh, here's a bunch of facts. Will walks into the room. No, you guys are wrong. That was their role. The whole series was Will just to walk in the room and be like, no, this is what happened. And they're like, oh, we just spent like hours researching this, but yeah, it's cool.
And to go along with that,
yeah.
the fucking guest stars that they had were fucking awesome for the most part. Like, I never would have expected Eddie Izzard to be able to play a fucking serial killer. And
he killed it.
Since this, he has gone on to play a couple. But I'm like, wow, what a fucking, like, the guy who played Chilton, fucking amazing.
Everyone kind of works up into it also, like, because Eddie Izzard is great, but like throughout the seasons, he's better and better. Like,
yeah,
Dr. Chilton the same way.
I wasn't expecting fucking Catherine Isabel to show up. She did a fucking good job, you know. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, I love her. But you know what? Gideon was like my favorite character. Him and Chilton were my two favorite characters. Which, because I know, like, you know, the main people are there and they're always going to be liked, but you always kind of like are drawn to like the side characters, and I think those two were the ones that killed it. I found something else weird, and I know this is kind of jumping ahead, but like if you watch the movies, like they changed two of the main roles, like the Freddy role and Bloom's role from male to female. And then if you look at the movies, like there was only like two prominent female roles, which was Will's wife and Reba. So in this show, it's like, well, we'll change some of the males to females, and then we'll choose the most prominent white female to a black female. I'm like, well, you know what? At least they're just changing things and like giving everybody an opportunity, and I have to actually applaud that.
I wrote a thing on it on a article just earlier tonight, and I was like, you know, doing a casting change can work, especially if you do something like, you know, okay, Lawrence Fishburne was the best person we had audition for Jack Crawford. He gets the fucking role. Let's put him in it. You know, and you don't make a big deal out of it because it's not a big deal. But when you throw something in there and then you virtue signal afterwards and you tell anybody who complains that they're automatically a racist, a sexist, what have you, for doing the complaining, when, for whatever reason, you know, without looking at legitimate criticism, that's when it's an issue. And
agreed.
And I think in this case, everybody that they cast, for the most part, just fit the fucking role. Like, they understood what they were going for with the intent of the show, with the differences from the books and the movies, but also where they wanted to stay similar. So,
the girl that got playing Freddy, she was the best Freddy, although props to Stephen Lang's fucking hair game in Manhunter.
Oh my god. Yeah.
My god, I was like, holy shit, that's fucking don't breathe, motherfucker. Okay, that's great. Look at his hair, but
and that's saying something when you have Stephen Lang and
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Philip Seymour Hoffman being the people you're compared to. So,
but she was better. She was better. I would say, like, okay, yeah, Morpheus was better than, you know, fucking Harvey Keitel kind of sucked in Red Dragon. I don't care what anybody else says. I think he was the worst of the Jacks. But honestly, a lot of the casting, all in all, this was like the best version of the character was what the show gave us.
I feel a little, like I said, I feel a little unfair comparing it when you have somebody with like 39 episodes, so, you know, over 30 hours to develop a character versus, you know, somebody who's maybe got like an hour of screen time in a movie. But at the same time, I mean, if he's the best Jack, he's the best Jack. There's no two ways about it. Like, Scott Glenn was pretty good, but I mean, when you're dealing with 20 minutes of a movie where you're a secondary character versus being like probably one of the three leads, you know, definitely the one with the most face time in the credit sequence, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, I love, see, the thing about, like, you couldn't cast a bunch of female characters in Silence of the Lambs because what that movie was about was, I mean, essentially is a woman in the man's world and, like, this dark world. It's a very feminist picture, as I see it now, more recently.
Yeah, it would have lessened the impact, right?
Yes, absolutely. But like the show really isn't doing that, which it really shouldn't, because they're not really doing a lot of Silence of the Lambs. And I didn't even realize that Harvey Keitel was the same character as Lawrence Fishburne. I forget that Harvey Keitel is in Red Dragon every time until I see it or until Kat mentions it. I forget.
and then I mean,
There's just
Dennis
too much
Farina
movie.
was good for what he was too, but I mean,
He was fun.
Yeah.
He really was fun. Like, actually, I never liked Manhunter nearly as much. And then I was like, you know what? Now that I've seen him, I've seen all this stuff. I think Manhunter is such a much better movie than Red Dragon. And it's like all with like, lower budget, lesser actors, lesser well-known actors, let's say. But I feel like everybody kind of did their role better.
Yeah, for sure. And it was made closer to when it came out, so, you don't have to go fudge like the technological side of shit, because, that was still the technology that you were using back then. But, the one thing I'll say after just having rewatched them is that, Dollaride gets the short end of the stick in Manhunter. Like Tom Noonan didn't do a bad job for what he had, and he was probably, because he's not supposed to be a super good looking, probably a way better casting than Ralph Fiennes, but Ralph Fiennes gets the better part in Red Dragon versus what he had to play in Manhunter. In fact, in Red Dragon, Ralph Fiennes and his character, Francis Dollaride, it's the only part where you're actually given the background into the abuse and why he actually, grows up to become a serial killer. Versus,
I was surprised they didn't do that in the show.
I was surprised too, but it probably just didn't matter as much because they were going into where he was now, like, which you definitely get way more of in Hannibal than you did in Red Dragon. Like the physicality. Yeah.
It's more of a Manhunter approach.
And I will say that I know this is skipping ahead, but I thought one of the coolest effects was when you first see him in like episode 8 or 9 of season 3, when he actually shows what he sees himself as the Red Dragon. I was like, that's fucking cool. So.
Yeah, and it fits with what the show was doing with like the artsy stuff. Well, just as we're talking about the things we love, best episode of season 1, I've got Buffet Freud, directed by John Dahl. That's episode 10. John Dahl, of course, did Red Rock West and The Last Seduction, great film noir movies in the early 90s. I think Kill Me Again with Val Kilmer. Also, he did Joyride and Rounders. And he's actually directed a bunch of Dexter, which this show also feels a lot like in certain ways, but twisted and original with the source material. The opening scene is with the girl being pulled under the bed and the blood splatter, and then I'm going to call her the Glasgow smile girl with the fish guts and the blurred Hannibal face at the end of the episode. Do you guys remember that one at all?
Yeah, can I criticize that for just a second? Not your opinion.
Absolutely.
But what a terrible job they fucking did in that opening scene, because they have the killer hiding underneath the bed, and we see how small the bed is, and we see that they're dragging body width. It was only like a full-size bed. Mathematically, what we see on screen doesn't happen. Like, it just isn't possible, like, how they filmed it. I was like, as smart as this is,
she would have been, like, 3 feet out from underneath the bottom of the bed by the time she hit the wall.
Yeah, I was like, do you have, like, a weird, like, gap in the wall? Like, is the killer just hanging out of the side of the house? That was my only real issue, but it just seemed bad.
It felt more supernatural, like, the way they shot it. They shot it to make it feel more like a horror show. I think that's what they did there.
I agree. It was good. It was a good episode. That was like my complaint.
Yeah.
My other question
cut up her
been,
face.
Like, how the hell did that hole in the roof happen when there weren't any trees that were tall enough to land on it? But, that's nitpicking shit. But yeah, no, and that's a big fucking hole, too, for all of that snow to be coming in and melting into the house.
Yeah, I agree.
But no, it was a good episode. How fucked up is it that the doctor knows that Hannibal is fucking manipulating Will and just fucking goes along with, that's probably one of the things I like most about Mads is, just how he was able to, manipulate people into going along with shit that they knew was fucking wrong.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole, with Jack Crawford's wife, too. I mean, she legitimately says this is a conflict of interest. And they just go through to it anyways.
Yeah.
It's in all of these different ways of where you're like, wait, what? And then I stopped asking those questions because it's you're kind of through the way we see the show is more of the perception of, either Hugh Dancy or Will Graham, and he's psychotic in his own way, and then Mads Mikkelsen, who's psychotic in his own way, and Jack Crawford sees the world in some completely other black and white way, and I love the way Lawrence Fishburne plays this guy, and the way he does it is just so straightforward, and he's not trying to steal any scenes, and he's just doing the work, and it's just for me it just steals the show of all these great performances.
I love the fact that they were able to write intelligent characters who you realize, really intelligent characters. You realize Jack and Will are really smart, but they were able to make Hannibal so much smarter. that it's easy to see how people could be fooled into just falling for all of his shit.
And that he would keep doing it because he's a narcissist, psychopath, sociopath, all of it. He's all of it.
Why did you do this? Oh, I just wanted to see what was going to happen.
And he's been getting away with it for so long. It follows kinds of, loosely from me watching the show, with some distance to it, it really kind of coincides with things you watch with serial killers and just kind of how they break that down. And they touch on it in Dexter also, but in a much different way, because in Dexter it's all internal through the narration, and this we see it, on the outside. I don't know. It was really, really cool. Really, really cool. What are your guys' favorite episodes? Do you have one, Kat?
I do. I just want to offer a really funny thought, though. I just try watching one episode and just imagining Lawrence Fishburne's character as Max from Nightmare on Elm Street. He lived through it, changed his name, got his shit together, dealt with the psychopath that was Freddy Krueger, and went on to be Jack Crawford. Now watch another episode with that in mind. It's really magical. It just is.
You said the shit. That has to really make sense.
My favorite episode was actually relatively early on. Although I liked episode 8 and 10. I gave an 8.9 and a 9.0. My favorite episode was episode 5. I don't know how to pronounce it. Coquitas.
Was that on the Kent scale?
This is the Kent TV scale.
Oh, okay, so it's different than the Kent movie scale. I was going to be like, holy shit, a 9.0?
So I had to, in my blog, in my reviews, I compared it to what IMDb gave it, so I had to adjust not only for a 10 scale, but also for a 10 TV scale. So yeah, my numbers are really skewed compared to my movie ratings, so yeah. But yeah, I gave this a 9.4. This was the Angel Maker one. Visually, loved it. I loved the story behind it. It was creepy. It had just a lot of good things going on for it. I don't know. I really just I don't know why that one of all of them really struck a chord with me. There was a lot of them that I had in the high 8s, but that was the only one that reached, above a 9 for me. So, yeah, I don't know.
Or People as Angels?
Yeah.
That was a pretty rad.
I mean, granted, not to nitpick again, but really, the skin that they had torn off the back was so much bigger than the holes that were on the back, but that is nitpicking. But the wings were substantially bigger than the holes that were on the back. Just saying.
I guess my one nitpick with that one, and I that's definitely one of the ones that I remember because the fucking kills are creepy, is, they talk about, this guy is only murdering, other criminals. And there's no way, especially when when they figure out what's going on, that he would have been able to tell that all of these people that he's murdered were corrupt or criminal in some way. So that just seemed out of place, like they were trying to do like Kevin said, some more element of horror in there. But, I really like that episode. I like a lot of them. Probably my favorite was Fromage, episode 8. Franklin's kill, came out of nowhere and, was pretty awesome. But, Tobias's murder at the beginning, the guy with the cello sticking out of his neck.
The vocal cords exposed?
Yeah, the vocal cords exposed. I found that to be really interesting, especially because that rides on the back of, something that actually happens in the books where one of Lecter's victims was, a person in the symphony who Lecter got rid of in order to make a better sound, so they just kind of swapped that over to Tobias. The other killer that I found really interesting, and we don't really see too much of him, he's only in there for a fucking scene, was the totem pole killer from True Normand in episode 9.
Oh, yeah.
We don't really it's Lance Henriksen, and we only see him for a scene, but the fucking totem pole was pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah.
How disappointing was that, though? You see Lance Henriksen's name, and you're like, oh, Lance is going to be in this episode, and then he has such a mediocre scene. That was the biggest waste of talent. The whole series was Lance Henriksen.
Oh yeah, I'd agree. And, well, I mean, to pair it up, though, we go immediately back into Eddie Izzard. Right after the two after. So, I mean, yeah, I really enjoyed season 1 for the whole killer of the week because we got to see, some really creative serial killers in regards to their kills and their methodology and their reasons. And we got to see a lot of, Hannibal's manipulation of will. But it's probably the most straightforward of all 3 seasons in regards to what's actually happening and going on.
Very, very straightforward. I just want to mention that episode 5 was directed by Guillermo Navarro, who is a cinematographer for From Dusk Till Dawn, Kronos, Devil's Backbone. I think he does a bunch of Guillermo del Toro stuff, which I thought was pretty cool. And episode 8 is Tim Hunter, who directed River's Edge and Smiley Face Killers, which is a pretty weird one with Crispin Glover and written by Bret Easton Ellis of American Psycho fame. So I wanted to I was really impressed with the directors. And even the one episode I didn't like was by James Foley, who directed Glengarry Glen Ross, of all things, and Fear with Mark Wahlberg. And Reese Witherspoon.
That was such an amazing scene for a guy at my age. That scene was epic. Okay, it just was. Y'all know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Oh, and episode 8 was Gillian Anderson's first episode, and I wrote that. That was pretty cool. I didn't know that she was in it.
I gotta say this.
She's actually. I have some more awards later on, and best guest star goes to Gillian Anderson. But go ahead, Chris.
I have to say this. Gillian Anderson has always been a great actress. Yes. I've loved her since the X-Files, and she's in one of my favorite rom-coms, and Where the Heart Is. I've heard nothing but good things over Sex Education, I never was really attracted to her as Scully, and I know a lot of people like had like formative teenage year shit with that, but holy shit, was she fucking hot?
Oh, yeah.
Agreed. She's never been hotter. I in my opinion, I was like, I guess I had the same kind of note regarding her. Although I'll offer something else. I got really lucky. I got something right about her. When I was initially writing about her character's name is Bedelia. I'm like, you know what? I don't know any other character ever named Bedelia aside from the original Creep Show in the Father's Day. I want my cake, Bedelia. And then I was reading in the Wikipedia. That's where the name fucking came from. Because they were big fans of Creep Show and The Shining, which we know that there's 2 bathroom scenes, and then there's the Lloyd and there's the D. Halloran character. Like, there's so many Shining fucking references. But Bedelia was the Creep Show reference. Yeah.
It makes sense that you would be the one.
No, that is cool. I was like, what is her name again? And then it was like, you hear Bedelia, and you're like, how did I forget that Gillian Anderson plays Bedelia? Even with her name change later on in the... What's her last name? It's Bedelia...
Yes.
Du Maurier. Yeah, that's why that one.
Yeah. Yeah, it got better when it was Fell. I was like, oh, that's much easier to write.
Yeah.
I can just imagine.
So, I have to bring up, so it's funny, has any character in the history of television got murdered in the first episode and yet got so much screen time later on in the series as frickin' Hobbs did? He was in 10 fucking episodes of this series, yet he's dead.
Well, I applaud it. And the best work he did was in the first episode, because it's funny. I want to mention this, because when they show up to the house at the end of the episode, and like Hugh or Will Graham's showing up, and they're like running in, and it's, what's his name? Something Jacob Hobbs. Yes.
Garrett Jacob Hobbs.
Garrett Jacob Hobbs.
Yeah, Garrett Jacob Hobbs.
He's coming out the front door with his wife and just slits her throat and then just throws her at the cops. It was so awesome. It was one of my favorite things. And honestly, the first episode is a close, probably second, and very honorable mention of one of the best episodes of the season. And definitely, you know, but yeah, like when he just slits her throat, I rewound it and watched it again, because I just was like, oh my God, if I saw this and I was like, Hannibal, low bar, you know, NBC, who cares? And then like seeing that, I would have watched it as much as possible. But throughout the seasons, they do change days, and that stuff would have affected my being able to watch it throughout the time it was on, even though I didn't.
One thing that you brought up when we were watching it was, and I'd agree with you. I was surprised as fuck that this was on network television.
Just the opening shot with Will Graham, like shooting everybody.
Yeah. All right. How was it, like, the right call to just make genitals into basic plastic Barbie dolls, or should they just use more shadows? Because, like, sometimes they just shadowed over, you know, nudity, and other times it's just like, I see that there's tits, but there's no nipple, so we're going with the Barbie doll thing. Like, it was a weird way to get past being on network TV, I would say. Like, it was smart, but it was weird, too, to show it that way.
It worked in this show because it became, well, maybe you didn't realize how artsy it was in the first season, but there was touches of it, and because the stag and stuff was in the
totem pole.
The totem pole, yeah. The angel, like, yeah. There was a lot of stuff, going on. So, yeah, it worked, but I mean, it was kind of weird at first, but like once you get to season 2 and they do that stuff, you know, and then season 3 we get to see Will Graham's butt. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, how is this not on fucking FX and reruns? FX has the man ass.
That's a good question. I mean, don't we see his ass in season 2 too?
Possibly.
Yeah,
there's a lot of sex going on in that.
When he's having the sex with Margot?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is correct. That's the first real nudity.
The first real ass.
I mean, we have all those nude people in early on with the I don't know, the mural killer. And I'm sitting there I'm not trying to be a pervert, but I'm just like seeing like how they did it, and I wasn't sure if they just kind of covered and like colored whatever they covered the people with, like, to match their skin tone, or if it's just digitally edited. I think it was...
In the mural, though, their arms were positioned over them. I was looking, too. Not all of them, but there was a lot of them. But there was men in there, too, though.
It's funny, because sometimes you straight up get nipples, and then sometimes you don't.
Because it was guys, though.
Yeah, it was... there was male nipples,
I'm pretty sure
but there wasn't female nipples.
I'm pretty sure you get a couple nipples in episode 1. Between the girl in the field, like a couple side shots.
Oh yeah, side boob. Which in the logo that I had made, I was like, "Hey, I need you to make sure that girl has a boob." So it was very important. Like, it was a very, very fun conversation talking to this girl in Pakistan. Like, "Hey, can you make sure that we have some side boob in this?"
No nipple.
On that note.
Can we talk about Abby's eye color for a second? Because they made such a big deal out of how all the girls look just like Abby, except she had blue eyes and every other girl that they showed had brown eyes. Why not just give her friggin' contacts?
And did they specifically mention the brown eyes? I don't remember that. And I was like...
They specifically mentioned how they looked identical to her. And it was like, yes, except... I don't know, I'm always gravitated towards eyes. So, like, it immediately jumped out to me like, oh, Abby has really pretty blue eyes. And then every girl that, when they're shown the pictures on the board of missing girls, I'm like, brown eyes, brown eyes, brown eyes. And it was consistent. It wasn't like a couple of them had brown and some had blue. No, all the other girls had brown except for Abby. And I thought that was I found it weird how they made such a big deal that they were identical, but the eye color wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know. They didn't mention the eye color specifically.
That I can't vouch for, and I didn't go back and rewind.
Kent's right in that they said that these girls were similar, same height, same hair color, same eye color, but they never said they had blue eyes or they had brown eyes. So
yeah, it's just a weird. I'm just surprised they didn't just give her contacts. I don't know. It was that's my biggest gripe with that particular thing. But whatever. It's a nitpick. I get. I want to give you one great quote. It was like one of the first episodes. It might have been episode 1 or 2. I don't know. I'm hoping you guys remember this quote. So. Hannibal, Will, and Jack are talking, and Hannibal says, "I'm sorry, Will. Observing is what we do. I can't shut mine off any more than you can shut yours off." Will says, "Please, don't psychoanalyze me. You won't like me when I'm psychoanalyzed." Jack goes, "Will," and then Will goes, "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go give a lecture on psychoanalyzing."
It was episode 1. It was episode 1.
That was such a good fucking...
No, I don't remember. Yeah, I didn't have that one written down.
You wouldn't like me when I'm psychoanalyzed.
No, excuse me. I did write some quote. I do have a favorite quote, but I will do, before I get there, I do have the best actor of the season. I'm going to give it to Lawrence Fishburne as Jack Crawford, because he says stuff like, "You're not Will Graham's psychiatrist, Dr. Bloom. Dr. Lecter is," like, with a straight face. It's so great. And I like those little lines. And there was another one too that I can't find, but he just had these really great lines that sound so bizarre, but he's so deadpan serious with it. I was just letting it go. My favorite line is from Will Graham, played by Hugh Dancy, in episode 6. He goes, "I see the Ripper, but I don't feel the Ripper. This is plagiarism." I really don't like Hugh Dancy's portrayal of Will Graham. I think I just don't like Will Graham. And like at that moment, I was like, "Oh my God, this dude is like a pretentious art critic on murder." Like this dude's that's what that line is. He's just like, you know what? That doesn't really seem like the kind of murder. It was. I do grow to love Will Graham, and especially for where season 1 ends. The fact that he goes to jail and gets arrested, despite all of the other stuff that you did mention, Kat, and it was kind of ridiculous. And I never really even thought about it until you mentioned it. But I kind of forgave all of that because I was more excited about where the show was going to go in season 2 because I didn't see that coming. And it's still, I could see it working for the show. And I did ask myself, especially at that time, and even before that, I was like, I feel like they're probably going to like write themselves into a corner, and without really realizing that they kind of did, and then Jack Crawford shows up by himself, the bulldoze it.
They just bulldoze.
Yeah.
They're just like, fuck it. All sins will be forgiven if the next season's great.
Give them more blood, and that's all I really asked for.
Awesome.
If you give me great gory scenes, the writing, all that stuff is, but it'll take me a couple times to maybe the next time I see it, which I will watch this again. Yeah, I don't know. Was there anything else you guys wanted to add on season 1?
I'm all tapped out on my. I'm saying I'm all tapped on my notes because each episode I probably wrote up like 3 to 4 pages, and I didn't do like separate notes specifically for this podcast, which I'm realizing in hindsight kind of would have been ideal, but
No, I think we can probably move on from here if you guys are ready.
Yeah, we can keep this one going, and then we'll take a break after season 2 discussion.
Okay, so season 1, the titles were all from French cuisine. Season 2, the titles of the episodes are all in Japanese cuisine, and then season 3, they go into Italian. One thing I fucking loved about season 2 was where it starts, and then it leaves you hanging all the way up into the fucking final episode. But we open up with Jack and Hannibal having like a fucking life and death match in the fucking Hannibal's kitchen, beating the fuck out of each other, getting stabbed, being choked, bloody, and Jack gets stabbed in the neck and locks himself in a room. And then 3 months earlier, when we cut back to Will is now in a reversed position from where the books and the movies that we've seen with him, particularly Manhunter and Red Dragon, had established, and he's inside the psychiatric institution, and Hannibal is on the outside now assisting the FBI in profiling serial killers, while Will is now stuck trying to prove his innocence and that he wasn't the one who actually committed all of the murders that Hannibal did in season 1 and has accused him of. So that right there goes a good part of the way towards why I like the show, because they were able to take the baseline material and fucking flip it and make it work. And I think make it work really well. Like, up until about, season 3, episode 8 or 9, we don't even see Hannibal with the mask that's kind of like the iconic picture that we associate with the character, from...
Will wears it before he does.
Will wears it right in episode 1. I'm like, so I mean, that was just a really good turnaround. So the overall premise of the storyline for season 2 is that Will starts out in the mental institution knowing that Hannibal has framed him. Hannibal knows that Will knows and is trying to manipulate him. At the beginning, we're not quite sure towards what, but as we go along, and it's finally Will's innocence is proven and he gets released, he goes back to therapy with Hannibal, and we find out that Hannibal is trying to manipulate Will into becoming a serial killer like him, since he can appreciate Will's empathy. and Will is able to empathize with Hannibal because of that. At the same time that he's trying to work undercover with Jack in order to expose Hannibal as the Ripper. And it's just kind of a cat and mouse back and forth between the two of them on, where does Will's allegiance actually lie, with Hannibal or with Jack? I mean, you don't really find out until the very final episode of season 2. I think we get one of the coolest, secondary killers in this show with the Eye of God mural killer. Whether or not we can see nipple or not, or genitals or not, that's still a really creative use of fucking dead color in dead bodies. That you really don't see in television. And definitely one of the hardest scenes to watch, I think, is the dude pulling himself loose from the ligatures and the lacquer that's been painted over him, having to rip his skin off.
Dude, that was Saw 7.
Yeah, but he actually succeed versus Chester Bennington failing.
Right. Yeah. I agree. And it wasn't in 3D, thankfully.
Yeah. We lose one of the pre-title main characters when Beverly Katz gets killed, and she gets killed, and like I said, in a way that actually got me to watch the entire series. Do you think we would get that kill if Cube had never happened? Or at least the way that it was done?
That's the very first thing that comes to mind if you've seen Cube.
Go ahead.
Speaking of, one of the directors, let me see which episode of this season, but Vincenzo Natali
makes
directs
so
episode 8, season 2.
So that we also get a couple really cool.
Yeah, the director of Cube and Splice. Sorry,
never watched Sex and the City, but Cynthia Nixon I think worked really well as just the kind of despicable corporate FBI person. Fucking Jonathan Davies, as we talked about. Jeremy Davies, as we talked about before, the podcast started, plays a fucked up dude,
Jeremy.
In the head. Jonathan Tucker, another guy that I've seen in a bunch of shit and really enjoyed. Almost actually.
He was in The Ruins, which another person later on in the show was also from The Ruins. Go figure.
Yeah, he actually almost kills Hannibal. We get more Chilton, more Abel Gideon. Miriam Lass comes back. And we get the introduction of both Mason and Margot Verger in the back half of the season. Showing how despicable a person Mason was, especially to his sibling, considering that in Hannibal they completely excised that whole plot, the movie, that whole plot of the book. Leading to probably one of my favorite episodes of TV ever with Mizumono, which is the season 2 finale, where everything just comes full circle. Jack and Will are slated to be arrested by the FBI for trying to entrap Hannibal. Will alerts Hannibal, hoping that he'll run, and then Jack shows up early and shit gets real. And we end up with an ending for season 2 where we have no idea who among the main cast other than Hannibal and Bedelia are still alive, with Alana, Jack, Will, and Abigail all lying on the floor bleeding out in different rooms of Hannibal's house. So, it kind of gets rid of the whole Killer of the Week format that season 1 established to do more of a serial storytelling perspective, while still giving a few of them in there. We have the Eye of God Killer, we have the dude who wants to be a predator and builds himself a hydraulic cave bear suit. That was fucking interesting. And what Will does to his body is pretty cool fucking from a look standpoint. Shit going on with Mason cutting his face off. After, murdering Will and Margot's child in the womb and taking Margot's uterus and ovaries out from her. So yeah, a lot of really fucked up shit. And we get even more, like Kevin alluded to in the season 1 discussion, like surrealist imagery. I hope you get, like, when you asked me what the logo should be, I was like, it's definitely got to involve antlers in some way. So.
Oh, I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah, but I mean, between the shit in episode 1, and then the, like, Wendigo dude that comes to represent Hannibal and Will's subconscious, the deer that he sees, the elk that he sees in other words, and then, him starting to grow antlers out of his back in his dream images where he's imagining himself as the killer that Hannibal wants him to be. I mean, I think it's probably the most, iconic image from the show in regards to that kind of stuff. I don't know. What did you guys think?
So good. I love this season.
Yep.
Oh man, yeah. First of all, Michael Pitt.
I've seen him in a couple
as
things,
Mason
not a ton, but in
Verger.
What was the one with Sandra Bullock?
Right? Yes. Oh my god.
Murder by Numbers?
Do you guys know Michael Pitt? Oh, I don't know that one. Yeah. He was in Bully, the Larry Clark film with Brad Renfro and Nick Stahl, Bijou Phillips, and Rachel Miner. That's probably the first thing I saw him in.
Okay.
And then he was in he's Tommy Gnosis and Hedwig and the Angry Inch. And then I know that he was on the first season of Boardwalk Empire because it's the only one I've ever seen. Long time ago. But yeah, he was awesome, and the dog feeding where Mason Verger is feeding his face to the dog is like better than it is in the movie Hannibal.
Yeah, I mean the way they tied it back into
it's so good.
The Hannibal storyline into this.
He's definitely my favorite guest star.
The one that gets Margot basically inseminated, and then Mason killing their child. Hannibal trying to manipulate Will into murdering him in order to, cement himself as, like, Will's Jedi Master. I mean,
and he was sexually assaulting.
Okay, it's funny. In Wikipedia, they out and out say it, but I rewatched the scene a few times.
She was seeing?
And they don't really say it. It's implied, but they don't say it. So, it's implied. The tears are great, though. Collecting a tear martini. Yeah. I want to try it. Just saying.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I would drink her tears.
Please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Catherine Isabel? Yeah. She did, She's got a really small part in Insomnia, the Christopher Nolan movie.
The only thing I remember seeing her in
she's got a really small part in that, and it's probably one of her first.
It was like Ginger Snaps Insomnia.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So I was really pumped.
Just killed it later on. Like Ginger Snaps. I haven't
seen
the
that.
First two were. The third one just skip.
It's
horrible. They go back in time. It's a really weird. It's probably something you'd fucking like, Kevin.
I didn't realize there was a third one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a werewolf, yeah.
It was interesting in that it was like kind of using werewolf.
Is it a werewolf
story
movie?
as like a
coming of age thing.
Well, not
right?
just a coming of age, but like a menstruation.
Yeah.
Like analogy for like teenage girls, but it was it was really well written and done in the first place. The first two were, at least.
Yeah.
And I know we brought
they're
up,
on. I'm gonna check out
Chilton
at least the
before,
first
but,
one
like,
in October.
can we just go into
for my
how much this guy
31
gets
movies
fucked
I
up
haven't
in this
seen
show?
before.
What?
He's earned my respect to the point where he's my third favorite character in the whole series.
Like, I got Will too. Like, those two guys get so fucking injured over the course of this show, man. I mean, I think it's more like the cheekbone, but yes, he loses his eye because he gets shot through the face.
He gets it in the eye in this season, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, because you could just get away with shooting a guy in the face
one, though,
and then
right?
never be seen again on the series.
The My Girl.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
My Girl
obviously
does it.
something happened. You know, we didn't never have to focus on her again.
Yes.
A little closure. Her character was great. I would have liked a little closure. Like,
I will say, Kent,
yeah.
she was great, though. My biggest issue with this series, especially with how it ends, is the lack of closure we get for everybody except for Will and Hannibal. And I get that they didn't want it to end. They weren't sure it was going to end, so they tried to do something that could work as a series finale, but it was only supposed to be a season finale. But yeah, the lack of closure is definitely one of the biggest things.
It bothered me, especially with Abigail's character, especially. But, something else was like, we have fake out death scenes, and then we have it didn't happen on screen. Like, when Will shoots Gideon, I thought he killed Gideon. So, so many things in my blog are just straight up wrong. Like, I can't tell you how many times I wrote, Bella's dead because Jack is talking about it like she's dead. And then she shows up 5 episodes later. I'm like, this bitch does not die. I'm happy. I liked Bella as a character, but they, I don't know, she just lived for fucking ever with cancer, and good for her, I guess. It was, I don't know how Gideon survived. I don't know, people are taking gunshots to the head, and then people are disappearing, and then it's the closure. It just, yeah.
Yeah.
Typically, yeah.
Yeah, getting shot in the face is a good way to close a character out, but I am glad that he didn't. I mean, it's satisfactory for me, anyways. Especially the way that was done, and then when I think it's season 3, because when they bring him back. But the worst episode, I think, which was really tough, was episode 5 with Jonathan Tucker, who I like too. He started the first thing that I would have seen him in would have been Sleepers. He was one of the kids.
That's a loaded cast. That cast is amazing.
With Brad Renfro.
Wait, are you saying this is
Kevin
one of
Bacon.
the worst episodes?
Yeah.
Kevin, the fuck?
Hey, you know what? Everybody's entitled to their opinion.
Yeah,
I know, but I can still say the fuck.
It was really hard. So I know. The reason. The reasoning, and it was so hard. This is the only thing that I could really think of that didn't set with me, was just the fact that Jonathan Tucker, who plays Matt Brown, kills Lecter so easily after meeting Will, because he thought because he wanted to be, I don't know, because he loved him, I don't know, just Will told him to kill Lecter because he thought Will was so good, but then he I don't know, didn't he? It just didn't make sense. I couldn't. When I watched the episode, I was like, I don't understand why he's killing Hannibal for Will, just because he asked him to.
Well,
it didn't really.
He thinks Will is
it didn't click, and then it. What does it say?
Slash the copycat. So he's like, dude, how did you manage to hide yourself inside the FBI? He's like, I've had a difficult enough time just hiding myself within, this Baltimore criminal psychiatric facility. So he's like, amazing, props to that, I'll kill him for you. See, and then, like you said, if there's going to be an issue with it, Hannibal's like, I'm the fucking Chesapeake Ripper. Will just fucking told you to kill me, and you're fucking murdering, the dude you're in love with. And he's like,
okay,
oh, fuck it, who cares? Will told me.
yeah, it just felt a little forced and rushed through. Maybe just like Jonathan Tucker, that I knew that it was coming to an end very, very quickly. So yeah, that was the only the only thing. But let me look at my notes. That episode was really good though.
That was the one where
because that's where Katz
gets killed, and
that's the first episode you watched.
4 and 5, but that's where they find her body again in the observatory.
Yeah, Katz all sliced up on exhibition. Yeah. And the manipulation of egos in this episode was great too, with Will to Gideon, but more importantly, when he gives his life rights to Freddy, his story rights. Like, it was just like he just took all of these people, and then I guess he did the same thing with M. Brown. Wow. With Maddie B. And Eddie Izzard is incredible in this episode, and I think it was probably one of his best episodes.
This is the one where he's finally realizing that.
Is that the one where he's in the back of the car? No, that's a little bit later, I think. But yeah,
who he fucking really was, or Yeah, it's hard to tell if he really. They manipulated.
You don't even know which way he's actually coming at it. It was
nice, convenient excuse to get me off of death row, kind of shit. So if that was your least favorite, what was your favorite?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And okay. But while we're talking about Eddie Izzard, is the thing I love most about him is the way this character is that I don't know if I can explain it, but he really does seem like the TV version, or just like a stereotypical version of what you would expect the Chesapeake Ripper to be like, or a serial killer in general. And then we get like what the actual serial killer is, which is Hannibal, and it's much different. So there's just a contrast there, and the way he played it, as I don't know, it was, I was really impressed. Favorite episode is episode 12, where Mason Vercher's getting his face bent to the dog. Like, it was I was blown away by that. Will slitting Hannibal's throat was pretty gruesome in that episode, even though it was dream sequence. And we think that Hannibal might really just have a friend. That was but that's basically why. And I will say the best acting I'm going to give for this season to Hugh Dancy, because this is the season that I really thought that his character worked. Once he was in jail and or wherever, the asylum, like I was really impressed, and I thought that it really worked, as annoyed as I kind of was about the character.
Dude,
and
that one fucking bothers me a
Amanda
little bit.
Plummer was also a great guest star in this season. Amanda Plummer and Jeremy Davies, like,
Ken, what was your worst and best episodes for season 2?
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I lost focus for a second, and I really wanted to get the Amanda Plummer reference in before Kevin did, and I just failed. So, fuck you, Kevin. So, realistically, I don't So, episode 6 was actually one of my highest rated episodes the whole series. I just want to throw that out there. I gave it that a 9.4, and we kind of know I'm stingy on my points. But worst one statistically, and it was not even close, was episode 9 with the guy with the bear suit. And I want to sum this up. This is what I wrote. If I said, this week's killer of the week is a former patient of Hannibal. Hannibal uses this connection to try to get even with Will in his attempt to kill him. It failed. Did anything else of interest really happen, or did I just sum that up right there because nothing else fucking happened? It was just a real throwaway fucking episode. Even if it kind of looked cool, it was really, really beyond pointless. It didn't do anything to really move much of anything else forward. I guess you could say a little bit like, oh, well, did the self-defense thing... I don't know. The episode didn't ring true to me in any way. And it wasn't like just low rated for me. There were the only other episodes, there was like episode 3 and episode 8. I had like an 8.1, 8.2. But no, that was just by far the worst. This season, though, had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 episodes. 6 out of the 7 I gave over a 9, surprisingly. And one of them was the Amanda Plummer episode. That was one of my favorites, but really, episode 12 was the best. Like, I know the season finale is supposed to be the best, and I get why people do it, but Mason cutting up his face and stuff, like, that's the better storyline. That wasn't over-reliant on, tying all loose ends. Like, it just stood kind of on its own, and for that, I'm giving it the slight edge, even though I gave both of them a 9.7. I prefer episode 12 ever so slightly more. We did, Kevin, and so once good, go fuck yourself.
Kent, do we agree on something? You hate the most artsy episode of the season, by the way, where it's all about like the transformation.
Kevin, we're talking about the
and
goriest episode where a man's mutilating his face. That's where it comes from me. It goes art for you. It comes mutilation for me. It works.
No, I would agree with you in that like not a lot happens in episode 9. I think probably the most important thing, from a story perspective, is the fact that Hannibal thinks he's converted Will at this point because of what Will does to the body. Afterwards with the mutilation in the museum. And Alana is in full-on, like, Will's a fucking serial killer now kind of shit.
I didn't give two shits about Alana in Season 2. She was really fucking obnoxious, but not nearly as obnoxious as Cade. Cade, I don't know. She just did absolutely
She was definitely like the Paul Krendler for this show. The Ray Liotta character from the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was Cynthia Nixon. Yeah. The FBI.
Cage.
Yeah.
Cynthia. Oh, she's the best. She's the best at the end because everything she says to Jack Crawford makes 100% sense. Like, self-defense.
She's not wrong.
See the fucking guy? Like, self-defense. No, she's not wrong at all. So she kind of takes over for the Jack Crawford type character in the first season, but isn't delusioned by these like friendships that that are really in a professional setting. She just breaks it all down. Like, this is not like you're gonna lose your job, and you should, because of this, and this, and you still are gonna go and do all of this. Yeah, like that was. Oh man! If not for Michael Pitt being so good, she would have definitely won my best guest star. Oh, and also I do want to mention you mentioned Alana. So I was not a big fan of her, but I did love when she's interviewing Will, like. And questioning Will in like what season or episode 2 or 3, like it was pretty quickly into this season where she's like now interviewing the guy that she like booty called, but then decided at the same time that it was unethical to bang him after she shows up for, dude, like total like what the fuck, and like they were trying to like I don't know, like trying to make these romantic interests because that's
how bad
what
was
you
the
should do in a
sex scene
TV
with
show.
her and Hannibal? Even I didn't even like the sex scene.
I like when she's doing I like when she's doing the interview.
Yeah, and then Will shows up.
And Will's like,
in his mind,
does Jack know about your advances towards me? And she's like, well, he does now.
Yes.
All right, so I think my least favorite of this season, 6 was edging close, but like I love the scene at the end when Jack's like, "Oh yeah, I'll take the food to go," and Hannibal's like, what?" It's probably episode 8. I think for me that's the weakest. I get that they're a lot of it is just trying to show that Will is trying to worm his way into Hannibal's good graces, but like the actual killer is kind of weak. I do like Jeremy Davis's character. The vet finding the woman popping out of the horse's incision at the beginning is pretty cool, but overall that was probably my weakest episode for the season. And the crow coming out of her. The crow coming out of the woman
out of her
came
chest.
out of the horse. It's like...
Yeah, it was Inception, man.
It's like, I swallowed the spider that swallowed the fly.
Yeah.
Also, in that episode... all right, as much as I love Catherine Isabel, and it's not her fault, her story didn't go fucking anywhere for, 2 or 3 episodes before finally they're like, oh yeah, we have this super talented horror actress, maybe we should actually give her something more than... I don't know. They just they drag their feet on making her interesting, and the show is guilty of that at some weird times where it's like they just drag their feet, and then other times it's really, really well paced, and other times
some of it. And see, that was one of the things I was alluding to when I was talking about some of it wasn't a big issue when you were watching it week by week.
Sure.
And then it gets exposed when you're watching, 5 or 6 episodes back to back, and now you see, part of that, in both season 1 and season 2, the whole Jack and Will dynamic, Will's like, Jack, I don't know if I can do this in season 1, and Jack's like, well, if you're gonna quit, fucking quit. And then, they stretch that out over a couple of episodes, where it didn't seem as big of a deal, because, week by week, you had the time. Or in this season where, it's like, is Will working with Jack or is Will working with Hannibal? And, it's supposed to be up in the air, but every single fucking episode, they're fucking asking the same question. Those 3 characters over and over.
Well, they won't.
Exactly. And then my favorite is probably the finale. I wasn't expecting in a show like this to have a couple really well choreographed fight scenes, which we end up getting at least 2 or 3 over the course of the series.
Except for the Tobias one. That looked like some Captain Marvel grade A bullshit fight scene.
Yeah, I would agree.
That was the worst fight scene.
The whole fucking whipping the piano chords back and forth.
It's such a bad scene.
I still love that fucking... I love that. It's an episode where Hannibal gets the shit kicked out of him, and we don't get a lot of that. But,
true, yeah.
But the fight between Jack and Hannibal is fucking brutal. And I'll tell you what, I thought Abigail was dead. I wasn't...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I was blown away when she showed up, actually. I was like, what? And I was all into it.
That caught me off guard, but I called Abby's reappearance very early on season 2, so if you read my reviews, you keep seeing me go, when's Abby coming back? I kept waiting, and I'm like, oh shit, I probably got it wrong.
And then just to have Hannibal fucking knife the shit out of Will, and then take her away from him again.
Slit her throat.
I love the fact that Hannibal is this fucking super genius, super talented at so many different things. And when he gets fucking upset, he throws a fucking temper tantrum like a little kid because he's so emotionally stunted that he's got to take away a fucking present from Will that he was going to give him. Oh, you're not going to fucking come away with me? Well, then you can't have Abigail. That's and the fact that Mads can do that with, for the most part, just his face, because he's very, almost inflectionless for a good portion of the series. is, you know, that's one of the things that really made me love his portrayal of the role. That and he sounds, you know, European compared to, I guess, he sounded European in Manhunter with, Brian Cox. But,
Did it take till season 3 to realize that he was Lithuanian? I don't think they mentioned that until season 3.
I want to say, I think they might say it once or twice in season 2, but it doesn't come up in season 1 at all, I don't think.
I was sitting there like, what the hell is this accent? I couldn't put anything to it.
So yeah, like, again, a couple of really great fucking, scene-stealing, guest stars. Like, Amanda Plummer, really creeped me out that episode. Especially, like, the part where she's got the dude, you know, numbed from the acupuncture and then she gives him the fucking lobotomy. Ugh, Jesus fucking. Lobotomies always bother me. So yeah.
She reminded me in that episode of her character. She was in, like, I don't know, one of the early seasons of Tales from the Crypt, and she's batshit crazy in that one episode. I was like, she kind of brought that character back almost. It was kind of cool to see, actually.
Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's what it was. Yeah.
That character? Yeah, the one.
So I really love this season. And what surprised me was that I loved it despite how different it was from season 1, which I also really loved. So that's one thing I think the show's got going, is that even though it's a serial show, like, each season definitely has a very different feel from one to the next.
Yeah, and season 3 has 2 different, like, honestly, I consider this 4-season show.
It really was. Like, there was a break between the first half and the second half, too.
The first half is...
which is, I don't know. I mean, I have no problem with it. And reading up, like, it sounds like originally they wanted 7 and then maybe 6 seasons, and then I don't know if it was rating. I don't know exactly what happened. It sounds like ratings kind of bombed season 3, but it sounded like maybe they already knew ahead of time that was all they were going to get was a 3rd season. So I don't know. It's kind of confusing reading up on Wikipedia the timeline of when they knew season 3 was going to be it, and like how they wrote it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know for sure. I mean, I know there was a plot line
or even edited it
where they wanted the whole show to go. And I know part of the thing that they were fighting was that the rights to Silence of the Lambs wouldn't have come up until they got to season 5, which was when they wanted it to do it. It would have been 2017.
You can tell, like, season 3, like the whole Italy thing. I mean, which I'll get to, but like, you can tell it feels very disjointed, and that like they had a plan, and then as you're watching, it's like the plan went awry, and they're not telling the story that they wanted to tell. And I firmly believe they had a story, and they had to basically cut that story in half, and that's why that plays out the way it does.
Oh, for sure.
Everyone thought it was too boring, I would imagine.
I think it was part ratings, part expense, because it was a pretty expensive show. I mean, you can see where it went into the quality of the way they filmed it, and the special effects and all the visual effects and all of that shit. And then again, the rights issues. So all of that combined, I think, together.
And the rights to the observatory, of course.
Of course. You know, they lost the rights to the observatory, so they were like, fuck this show's over.
Can we make fun of Bev for being, like, a really great character until, like, her last 5 minutes where she's just went complete dumbass?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, her character was one of the better, like, she wasn't, like, the other lab coats were there for comedy, like Zeller and Jimmy, they're there for comedy. She was, like, the good lab coat, and all of a sudden she just gets stupid at the very, very end. And I was like, I wish they would have given her a slightly better rhyme and reason to do what she did.
Yeah, no, I agree. One of the things I did like about Zeller, at least, though, was he got a little bit of character growth. Because he goes from being the one giving Freddie Lounds the information and being pissed off that she's, you know, abused his trust of her, to being, you know, antagonistic towards Will, to being completely against Will, to actually apologizing to him when he's exonerated in season 2. So, I mean, yeah, like you said, for sure, they're there to be exposition machines and give something for Will to rebut. But at least they gave them a little bit of character growth over the course of the 3 seasons.
I'll offer this. For anybody that actually is like, listen to this and then they're like, maybe I want to watch this. Get yourself a nice bottle of your preferable booze. And every time that Will visits Hannibal in Hannibal's office, you take yourself a drink and have a good time. Because that shit happens so often in season 2. It's like the most guaranteed thing that happens in season 2 is I don't even know how many times he visits Hannibal's office.
Can I add an addendum to that?
Oh, go ahead.
Every time Will visits Hannibal's office without actually visiting Hannibal's office in season 3, you have to take 2 shots.
Oh God. Yeah. That was not a treat for me. All right, as I alluded to in the previous podcast with Phantasm, writing a ongoing as you're watching review of what you're seeing in Phantasm, which is, fucking fever dream. Well, this was just as equally difficult half the time because I'm like, okay, Will's fishing. Oh, there's the stag. Okay, now we're in dreamland. Oh, Will's talking to Abby. Oh, Abby. Like, it sucks when you have to constantly differentiate, like, what you're doing when you're writing it. Like, it's fun watching it, but writing about it sucks.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, I couldn't imagine, just doing a stream of consciousness right on any show. Especially unless, I don't know, maybe after several times of watching it, being able to go back and do that would work. But, for me, just the way my mind works when I'm watching something is I want to be in to whatever I'm watching. And that does not lend itself well to doing how you write.
No, I mean, each episode probably takes me from beginning to end about 2 hours. And that's why instead of, was about 30 hours from beginning to end to watch the whole series, it most likely took me, much closer to like 80 hours. So it was a bit much. Fun fact. So the guy that Will had to kill Hannibal, Matthew Brown, I actually know a Matthew Brown. And he lives in Britain and I play Xbox with him. So I was like, huh. It's weird when you hear a character's name of somebody that you actually know, right?
Yes, especially in the context of the type of show that we're watching.
Yeah. Also,
that character.
So the very opening of season 2, which was fun, where they show like Hannibal and Jack fighting. I always liked that technique, and I had to do a little digging, and I found out that is called in media res. Apparently, is the name of the technique.
Yeah, starting something in the middle of an ongoing thing and forcing you to catch up.
Which I kept wondering. I was wondering, is this going to be something that they're going to get to like around episode 5, 6, or 7, or is this the actual end of the season? I wasn't sure because some shows, I think Walking Dead did it. I don't know, like season 6 or 7, someplace around there. They kind of did something like that, but they went back and resolved it after, 3 or 4 episodes. So I was really curious how long they were going to drag out me wondering, but it was worth getting dragged out for.
Oh, 2 things I want to point out before we finish up with season 2. One of the things that I really liked about the finale was the first 2.5 minutes of the episode, where it's cutting back and forth between Will talking to Jack, and then it blurs right into Will talking to Hannibal, almost like seamless transitions. As he's discussing the plan with, their version of the plan with each one of them. But the entire time, the only thing you have going on in the background is the clock ticking the entire time. I thought that was a really cool use of sound to go along with what's going on screen. And since we kind of run out of this after this season, what were your guys' favorite dishes that Hannibal did over the course of the first 2 seasons? Because, I don't know if we said it in the podcast so far, but I know we talked about it beforehand. Like Kent said, watching this show makes you fucking hungry.
I'll tell you the one thing that didn't look good was the like gelatin mold thing. That was the grossest looking thing. Just because I guess
I don't know. I'm kind of really fucking curious about what those birds would have tasted like.
Visually, it looked okay. Yeah, the was that the bird that you just eat in one bite?
Yeah, no, there was a separate bird that you just eat in one bite, but that was the fish, wasn't in the gelatin.
Fish was in the mold, right?
The fish still looked good too, like, yeah. So I was curious about what they would taste like.
I would have tried absolutely everything and come to find out, like, they actually brought in somebody to make sure that the food looked like it would be human flesh, like, when it was supposed to be. I'm like, good. That guy made a lot of money for such little knowledge, really. Like, what do you really bring into the table, sir? Like,
yes.
Oh, this meat looks like arm meat? I don't know.
Wrap that up.
What about you, Kevin?
I don't know if they made it, but when he was going through the recipe cards, the heart tartare, dude, that was so great, and I mean, basically anything with like meat.
I think my favorite looking one was when he did Gideon's leg in the clay.
Oh yeah. We had the same response. It was so good.
God, we could all go for some leg right now.
Oh my god, yeah.
All right, so I mean, do you guys have anything else you want to bring up for season 1 or season 2, or can we?
I do have.
I have two.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to say I like the use of the Rolodex in continuity with the recipe. And we don't get that in season 3, unfortunately. But I really liked how they kind of went back to that quite a bit in season 2. And I like taking note of the names on the business cards. And the other thing I really liked was, you were talking about the sound effects. All overall, like the sound effects, but like the music selections were really good overall in the first 2 seasons. I would say probably all 3 seasons, but notably the first 2 seasons. The music was really good.
A lot of it was just that very simple, like Chinese woodblock, or I should say Oriental woodblock kind of music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah, the sound and like sound design was like really, really good of how they overlapped some sounds, and then like with the artsy stuff, and especially that the 2 sides of Will Graham is what I like to call that scene with that's the beginning of the final episode of season 2. Yeah, the 2 sides where you're like, what's going on in this dude's head? And I don't know. And through watching it, he kind of has a plan, but he's like going by the seat of his pants. My favorite line of season 2 is your social worker in that horse?
Yes.
Which is also from your least favorite episode. I believe. Yeah. Is your social worker in that horse?
Yep.
But I get it too, because I remember in that episode, I'm like, why is Will seeing Hannibal Lecter? And then it's kind of like asked and answered right after, but I really don't remember why he was seeing Hannibal, because he's like the only person he can talk to.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, he's had the meeting with Jack out on the ice where they're ice fishing, and he's like, I'm a good fisherman, Jack. And Jack's like, you know what? You land him, I'll catch him, Will. So that's initially his plan. It's to go back in and work undercover, but then, he has killed at this point, and he feels like he's becoming a killer because of his empathy disorder, and Hannibal is really the only person he feels he can talk to about it, especially because at this point, Alana's closed off to him for, attempting to have Hannibal murdered.
Yeah. So that's a light closer for sure. She wasn't opening it up for Will anyways before then.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I'm really surprised she gave him back his dogs when he got out of prison. She was so pissed off at him.
Well, she was wrong.
Yeah, well, yes, she was definitely wrong, but I mean, like what relationship have you been in where like somebody gets that angry at you and then they're like, "Oh, here, have your dogs back."
I'll say this for her hair game was great until the Red Dragon, like the second half of season 3. Like up to that point, I really liked her hair game throughout the whole thing. Like she went through multiple styles, and they all looked really good on her.
All right, here's just a quick mental game to see if you guys can come up with something that I didn't. What happens to the series if Alana doesn't recommend Hannibal as the psychiatrist to help Will through finding Garrett Jacob Hobbs?
Wait, what? Didn't Jack Crawford already?
No. Jack went to Alana, and she didn't want to psychoanalyze Will because she was friendly with him. So she's like, "Well, I've got somebody I can recommend for you."
Well, she wouldn't be as rich as she is by the end of it. I mean,
do we even get any of the copycat killings because he's not involved at that point?
Well, I mean, who gets killed first, Will or Jack? I guess. Because, I mean, at that point, if Hannibal, I don't know, like, what attachments he has beforehand to any of these people. Like, does he see any of these people, like, as threats that he just wants to off because he doesn't have relations? Or does he build a relation some other way?
Well, we don't get any of the further Chesapeake murder or Ripper murders because he doesn't start up again until after they think that the body snatcher might be him.
Yeah.
In which case, I mean, do they even register on his, well, Jack obviously had before, but does Will even register on his scale, without Hannibal realizing that this guy is not only empathetic to a degree that he can manipulate, but he's also suffering from the encephalitis?
Probably not. It's a really good question. I really don't know. It's a good question.
So basically, we can just blame Alana for everything.
Yeah, it seems like the case, and I really didn't really like her. I don't know. The actress was fine, and like the part was good, and I think, but yeah, her scene, like her whole romantic thing with Hannibal, I was like, okay.
No, I would agree, Kevin. A lot of that felt just like TV stuff.
Yeah, and but I do think it all comes together. But I guess we can wait on.
I actually liked her best in season 3.
Yeah. Yes. I'll offer this what if. I would have loved to have just seen a what if season of if Will, Hannibal, and Abby all just left. And I would like to have just seen how.
Oh, let's get into that in the next podcast.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, we'll cut it here. I hope you come back for episode 51, where we hit the second half of Hannibal and probably the movies just a little bit at least. And take care.